Welcome to another episode of the Zebra Influencer Series. I'm your host, Scott Reyes, the Senior Manager for North America Zebra Alliances. I have the distinct honor of working with software organizations and alliance organizations that focus on innovating to resolve operational challenges for our customers. In my function, I help the alliance and ISV organizations navigate our Zebra ecosystem. We as Zebra are committed to our customers' outcomes, and we take pride in looking to the future, not only anticipating their needs of our customers, but we look to create new solutions with our alliances and ISVs, and we help bring them to market alongside our valued channel partners. Now let's move into our session. In this episode, I'll be speaking with a longtime alliance, Ivanti Wavelink, who have been with our organization for over 20 years. Our special guest is their chief evangelist, sales enablement lead, and all-around influencer, Paul Norford. But before we bring Paul on and give him his warm welcome, let me tell you a little bit more about Norf. He's super passionate in helping people, partners, and customers change the way they do business. Alongside his inviolable energy levels that inspire action, Norf brings a wealth of knowledge in the industry, influence, insight, creativity, and passionate to drive introductions of new solutions and adoptions of new services. He's empowering task workers at the edge to drive increased productivity and operational excellence. Let's welcome Paul.
Wow, that's a great intro, Scott. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. How are you, my friend? Are you well?
I'm doing well, Paul. Nice to see you again. For those who are probably looking us up on LinkedIn right now, Paul has previously worked at Zebra Technologies. A portion that I missed in that intro. And Paul is a friend, a coworker, and now an alliance partner. So, Paul, maybe you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, more than I've told them.
I've clearly got all three parts to that. So Scott, thank you, and look, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much for having me on. I think this is a phenomenal time, and in fact, I was talking to Mike, who's our support in this, and he was saying, you must be really excited about the content that you're going to talk about. I said, well, the content's great, but actually spending time with Scott is even better. So all is good. So what is it I do? So my name's Paul Norford. Most people call me Norf, Chief Evangelist at Ivanti Wavelink. I've been with the company for about 10 months now. Previous to that, I spent nearly 8 years to the day working at Zebra Technology. So it's really interesting now being on the alliances side of the fence. But I did spend about 8 years working for Zebra Technologies based in the UK, where I had a global role of being their solutions evangelist. Previous to that, I spent 15 and a half years working for a fairly well-known Finnish mobile phone manufacturer. That's my potted history.
Awesome. Well, that's a wealth of knowledge that you bring to the table. Now that you're on the alliance side, maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about what Ivanti Wavelink does. Maybe give us a brief overview.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And again, Scott, thank you for the opportunity. So at Ivanti, we create software for IT security. So think about things like IT service management, think about IT asset management, think about UEM, which stands for Unified Endpoint Management. We're also focused on identity management and supply chain management. Now, the last part is why the alliance between Zebra Technologies and Ivanti Wavelink is here, and this is a critical part. So Ivanti Wavelink is the business unit for Ivanti, and we've purely focused on supply chain solutions, and we've been leading the market for some 30 years now, and we create solutions that our customers absolutely depend on. Critical line of business software applications that we create. If you think about our technology and you consider, you may have heard the term green screen. So here's an example of kind of green screen technology. I'm not sure if that will focus, but that's the kind of green screen technology that sits inside a warehouse operation, for example. And our technology, amongst doing other things, will take that green screen technology that, if I give this device to my kids, they'll look at it and go, I have no idea what that means, Dad. We translate that into something like this, that actually is meaningful to us humans. So that's part of what our technology does. And we've been doing this for over 30 years. In fact, we started back in the symbol days, one of the previous names of Zebra Technologies. And we've been working side by side as a strategic independent software vendor since then. Where does our technology fit? So if you think of a large online retailer, think of your favorite online retailer. Our technology sits inside their workflow. So you wouldn't get those packages to your door of your favorite Western online retailer without our technology being an integral part of their workflow. And we don't just stop there. So our technology is now moving into the realm of IoT, Internet of Things, but a subset of that, which is the industrial Internet of Things. And we're working now with robotics and automation. Zebra, you took on the Fetch acquisition, and our technology integrates beautifully into that to, again, drive the future of supply chain and automation.
Well, thank you for that, Paul. Well, now that the audience has heard a little bit more about Ivanti, we can elaborate on what verticals you support. I know we just talked about some of the online retailers, but what other key verticals are you guys looking to invest in and supporting today?
Great question, Scott. So Zebra has 5 key verticals. There are others at the outside, at the what's the word I'm looking for? At the edge, if you will. Sub-vertical, yeah, absolutely. More adjacencies, but there are 5 critical verticals, and those are retail, transport, logistics, healthcare, warehousing, and manufacturing. So if you think about Zebra's 5 key verticals, we actually sit horizontally across those 5 key verticals, and also the ones at the adjacent edges. Anything with a warehouse, our technology fits in and helps customers really get the most out of their devices. And here's a great example of an Android device, again made by Zebra Technologies. But our technology sits across all of those verticals. One of the verticals that we're really going after, and there are hallmarks everywhere, and this all came out because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was shocking to have seen, and obviously we're all now feeling the fallout of that, some a little bit more personally than others. But certainly if you look at the healthcare segment, tracking and tracing medicine is critical, and making sure that medicine's fit for human consumption ever since the point of conception all the way to the point it's consumed. We see that we can add critical value into that. And one of the key things I love about the relationship between Zebra Technologies and Ivanti Wavelink is that there are synergies across almost everything that we do. So let's stick with healthcare. We've got to make sure that a particular medicine is fit for human consumption. And if it has to stay within a certain temperature range, we're developing technology that makes sure that medicine is kept within a specific temperature range. If it falls out of that, it's not fit for human consumption. So we're working on technology with that. We're working in partnership with Zebra as well, and that's one of the areas that we see is massive and will grow. And again, I don't want to take your thunder. There are investments that we're putting into that. There are investments that you're putting into that as part of Zebra, and there are critical synergies that we can have. And the healthcare space really is a key focus for us.
Yeah, we believe as well that the healthcare space is a growing market. To your point, alongside another market, the government sector, which in itself actually encompasses many of those verticals within the government supply chain in particular. But Paul, I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, which is the integration of UEM. And you mentioned a unified endpoint management. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by UEM and what's your strategy around UEM?
So that's a great question, Scott. Let me take you back a bit. Think about mobile device management, MDM. If you have a company where you've invested in Android devices, for example, you've got to make sure that you're getting the best out of these devices. You've got to make sure that you know where they are, whether they're being utilized, the condition of them. And these are very technical devices. We take them for granted. Now move into, and I referred to it earlier, think about Internet of Things. Think about being able to turn your lights on in your home, or turning on the heater, or turning on the air conditioning, all from your mobile device. The Internet of Things is a massive opportunity, but the industrial Internet of Things is also a huge opportunity for supply chain customers. And if you're thinking about the industrial Internet of Things, you'll be considering switches, you'll be considering sensors, you'll be considering actuators. There's a huge issue with labor shortages at the moment, which is why there's huge investments into robotics, specifically autonomous mobile robots, which is what Fetch does. But think about the technology that goes into trying to stand up some of those things. So an endpoint could be a sensor, an endpoint could be an actuator, which is something that gives you two-way feedback. Right. Mobile Iron, which is our technology, allows for mobile device management, so being able to manage your mobile fleet, knowing where it is, knowing the condition, its state, whether it's been compromised or whether it hasn't. But also Mobile Iron, which is, we've rebranded this to now Neurons for UEM. That's Ivanti Neurons for UEM. And the UEM part is the active bit, which is unified endpoint management. This software, which sits in the cloud, allows connectivity to those sensors and actuators. So we can see the condition, we can see what state they're in, we can see whether they're active, we can see whether they've failed. But also getting that data back into our platform allows us to do different things. For example, if you have an actuator that isn't working, we're able to take that data, ingest it, we're able to then look at other actuators, and we can look at the time it's taken between that actuator failing and other actuators that are in situ. So we could potentially play that back as to and state, well, we don't want to repair it when it's failed. Actually, what we want to do is to give you preemptive information so you can switch that out at a time that suits you before it fails. Make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. So a lot of so from a work order management perspective, preemptive knowledge base, so that someone can go out and do the work before it actually fails out, which I think is amazing. Which leads me to think that you guys are, I'm hoping you guys are, if you haven't already, you're working with our printing management section. Is that correct?
Funny that you say that. We're not just working with mobile devices. Absolutely. We're working with the printer management team as well. So we've got a print solution inside our portfolio that allows connectivity into Zebra printers, leveraging Link OS. So again, there are things that we can bring to life, but also because we're a software company as well, we can be relatively agile. So you may come to us to say, hey, listen, North, we've got an issue whereby we want to connect this particular piece of technology through a printer to go and do something else, or it might be some crazy idea that you choose to cook up with one of our mutual customers. We can absolutely sit down and work through that and create something that really is more than the sum of its parts.
And Norv, maybe tell the team a little bit about where you guys fit in the Magic Quadrant, or in those quadrants. I know everyone wants to know, hey, where are you as far as IDC or Gartner or Forrester? Where do you guys sit? Specifically from
Again, great question. Sure, great question. So from a UEM perspective, the industry analysts have recognized us, and we're now if you think about the quadrants, we now sit in that top right quadrant, and Neurons for UEM, Neurons for MDM, or as was Mobile Iron, has been recognized by those three industry analysts as really being best in class. So you mentioned Forrester, Gartner, forgive me, and also IDC. We have been recognized by those industry analysts. So really, don't take my word for it. There are independents out there that are saying what we're doing with Mobile Iron and the trajectory that we're taking it in really is second to none.
Right. If the audience wants to know, they can Google it. They'll find it pretty quick.
Absolutely, that's right. Don't just take
So
North's
now that
word
we're
for it.
talking about, right, we're talking about the expansion of the verticals that we just discussed. Now we've talked about UEM and unified endpoint management. Maybe let's dive into what's the strategy for expansion in your organization overall as an alliance or software vendor. Like, help us understand
Absolutely.
what's next for Ivanti.
So that's a great question, and I'm going to call him out because one of the things that I've learnt from Brandon Black, our GM, is he's always thinking about what's next. And he's been in the industry for a very long time. And I want to say he has been in the industry ever since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. But he considers what we're doing in mobile enterprise applications as the kind of here and now. And one of the things that we don't do, well, our culture in Ivanti Wavelink is never just to sit back on our laurels. We're at the top of the mountain. This is what we're doing. Happy days. Brandon is always thinking about what's next. And that drives the culture of what we're doing inside Ivanti Wavelink. So I alluded to it earlier. The Zebra acquisition of Fetch Robotics, consider the internet, the industrial internet of things, IIoT. We've built an IIoT platform that is working with Fetch, and I can't obviously say too much about this, but what's next for us is looking at the Internet of Things, is looking at the issues with labor shortages, with not being able to get people to pick and pack. So how do we change the status quo on that? And we are very keen to upset the status quo, to specifically disrupt the status quo, to be able to bring a lot of these things to life. So we're working with your teams on Fetch. We're working with AMRs. We're plugging that into our IIoT platform to really start to look at what's next. And there's many things that we're working on that's under the cover that I could tell you about, but I shouldn't tell you about, so I won't tell you about. But what's next really does start with, we're looking at the edge. We're looking at next level technology with the industrial Internet of Things. Plus, we're bringing in other elements, again, leveraging printers, leveraging Android, all of those things really to ensure that our customers push the envelope of operational excellence. Why? Because consumers are still driving the on-demand economy. So in order to stay relevant, we've got to be looking at what's around the corner.
Well, I think that's great. I think we can set up another episode once we're ready to talk about what came next and talk about it to the audience. But since you mentioned a little bit about labor cost and some of the labor challenges that you're seeing in the market, maybe we can dive into an example of what's going on in one of your customers. Help us understand what you're seeing from a day-to-day or from a new technology standpoint inside of these organizations.
So I'm actually going to talk about old technology. So think about terminal emulation. Remember the green screen thing that I told you earlier? We've just phenomenally off the back of the pandemic, we've noticed a 20% year-on-year growth, which is driven by terminal emulation, by this technology that is probably older than you've been alive, actually, Scott. This terminal emulation, this green screen technology, it's been around for years and years and years. And a number of people have said, well, this is now the year that terminal emulation will end. No, it's not. It's still going. And by virtue of that, we've seen this 20% year-on-year growth. So we've seen customers who are implementing new warehouses, and those warehouses are traditional, but they're also, and again, think about what's next, those warehouses will be mobile warehouses or distributed warehouses. So we're seeing customers now leverage and extend their terminal emulation driven by their warehouse management system. And our technology is connected to their warehouse management systems to be able to ensure that they've got visibility into what they're doing, and that technology is driving their output. Why? To make sure that customers like you and me get what they want when they want it, wherever they are in the world. And one of the things that we're also seeing with regard to terminal emulation is customers moving from, pencil and paper. It's one of my favorite mediums, but customers moving from pencil and paper now, digitizing their workflows to be able to leverage technology like this in their workflows to increase productivity and ensure that workers have got exactly what they need to see at the time they need to see it. Now, these workers may not be human, right? These workers
Some of
may
them may
well
not be.
be AMRs. some of them are human, that's right, but some of them may not be, right? So think of technology that's out there. Fetch, for example. If we're looking at moving our people from doing mundane tasks, like, it's now my turn to take the trash out. Why do I have to do it? Actually, we could bring in an autonomous mobile robot to do this for us, right? Which then releases that person to go off and do something that's much more task orientated and specific for a human to do. So, we're working with customers to really not just bring them up into the 21st century, but also to get them to think about, how do you really maximize and accelerate your workflows? How do you get the best productivity? How do you get the best bang for buck from the technology investments that you're making? And where I dare say that between Zebra and also Ivanti Wavelink, we're leading the pack when it comes to this. And we're seeing the numbers come back. We're seeing comments come back from our customers anecdotally to say, actually, what you guys are doing is phenomenal. Why didn't we know this earlier?
Yeah, well, let me touch upon that point of technology investment. Right, I think my experience with some of my smaller, mid-size, and enterprise-size customers, they want to know if this technology is readily available for them today. Like, can they do the same things as some of your mega retailers are doing today? Can they take that adoption of that technology, like an Avanti, like a Zebra, and it becomes available to them? I think they just need to know that it's out there. They're facing the same labor challenges, Paul, right? I think we're seeing that.
Right.
Help us understand,
Right.
how do you work with some of these mid-size or enterprise organizations?
Great question. So we alluded to it earlier. Think of your favorite global online retailer. Let's take the one in the West. Massive organization. They've deployed some 500,000 devices, Zebra devices, into their operation. They've leveraged Ivanti Wavelink's velocity framework to really bring to life what they're doing. And without velocity, that critical workflow just wouldn't happen. Now, that's a huge company. Boil this now down to maybe the kind of company size of maybe 100 people. Again, Velocity is our framework that's available on iOS and also this Android device here. You can get to Velocity through the Play Store. So in terms of barrier to entry, it's easy. Go onto the Play Store and search for Velocity. Also, and Zebra picked this up, they've seen how good Velocity is, and actually Zebra has got a piece of that. It's now rebranded within Zebra, and it's called All Touch Terminal Emulation. And that's our technology that's been rebranded specifically for Zebra Technologies. So even if you're a company of, say, 100 people, not necessarily 100,000 people like that big online retailer, for example, the barrier to entry to get our technology is really easy. There's no servers involved. You simply just download it from the Play Store, connect it, obviously license it, pay for the license, connect it to your warehouse management system, and off you go. And it all sits happily on device. If, for example, this device were to fail, that's fine. You send this device away for repair. You get another device out of the box, you turn it on, you download the Velocity client, you install it, you plug it into your WMS, off you go again. It's nice and simple. So the barrier to entry, the barrier to adoption to get our technology is super simple. And that's the reason why we built it as we've built it, to ensure that the large customers can get hold of it, but also the ones and twos with smaller warehouses can also gain from the technology that we built to increase productivity and to maximize operational excellence.
Well, I think that's awesome. I think there's a quick story I'll tell you about my son. He works for an organization that has green screens in there. He's 22, and he came to me the other day and asked me, how does this work? And I explained to him, I showed him your solution and said, this is how it could work if you had a better user interface that was more intuitive. And I think that drives to organizations need to move towards something like Ivanti Wavelink that would allow you to drive more efficiencies within your existing labor resources. But let's go back to some of the verticals, right? I mean, we talked about micro fulfillment, we talked about supply chain, or at least we mentioned micro fulfillment. And you're saying that there's still growth in that TE sector. What's next? Where else is the growth happening, Paul?
Huge amounts of growth, and I want to touch on what you talked about with your son, right? So, the reason why we firmly believe that green is last year is because of the current generation moving into the workforce, right? So I know that I'm Generation X, although a quick test I did, I'm physically Generation X, but I think like a millennial, which makes me a bit of a hybrid, and they call those people Zennials. How cool is that, right? That's a mashup
I
of
didn't know that.
Generation
I
X and
must be one
millennial.
too.
I think you are. You're probably closer to being, I say, a Gen Y because you look great, my friend. Anyway, the point is, companies do need to think like the next generation, or perhaps the generation after. And there are great things that generation is doing, and the user interface really is absolutely critical. So if you were to give two people a device, one with green screen, one with a bang up to date user interface that works really well and is intuitive, I can guarantee that training times for the interface which has been thought about, the workflow with this interface has been thought through, that's going to get picked up much quicker, because it's intuitive. All the training has been done with what iOS are doing, with what Android is doing. It's all been done for us. So why not capitalize on that? And again, just a very quick story for you. I was talking to a friend of mine some years ago, and he bought himself a brand new television, right? I think it was like a 56-inch television. And his son, who was 2 at the time, helped him unbox this television. And they set it all up, they turned it on. And his 2-year-old son walked up to the television and did this, got his finger out and did this. And turned around to his dad and said, "Dad, it doesn't work." Right? Because the expectation is any flat screen device, I can interact with it by pinching, by zooming, by swiping, all of those things. Now, transfer that from a consumer sphere into the industrial space. Why do we have to still live with green screen technology? No, we don't have to. And the Velocity framework or all-touch terminal emulation allows you to really customize that interface to increase the speed at which someone picks and puts away or packs or puts to light, whatever it is, but to increase that speed and increase the accuracy to ensure that each pick, each put away is done to at least 99.9% accuracy. So really, the point I'm making is the user interface is critical. The user experience is critical. Green is so last year, right? Now, green, or rather the user interface or the user experience, is the new black.
I like that. That's great.
It is, right? It's absolutely the new black. Tell me I'm wrong.
That's awesome.
You mentioned about kind of what's next, and is there still continued growth in TE? Absolutely. There's an eye-watering number which, if someone were to change their back-end system, change their WMS, it's an eye-watering amount of money to get that changed. It really is. So by leveraging Zebra Technologies and their devices, their printers, their Android devices, by leveraging a lot of the things that we're doing in terms of the independent software vendor program, what we've got built, and the investments that we're continuing to make in the Velocity framework, it really seems that TE, terminal emulation, is not going away. Even the two technologies side by side, terminal emulation and web, the investments that you make into your warehouse management system, it really just has to work. But how do you optimize quickly? How are you agile? How can you, again, drive different workflows, still leveraging the investments that you've made into your warehouse management system? And the way that we've done it is by partnering with Zebra and by developing our software and continuing to invest in it to ensure that operational excellence happens for everyone who has a warehouse across the 5 or 6 verticals, including government now, with Zebra. So there really is revenue to be had. There is still innovation that is continuing to happen with terminal emulation.
So, Paul, the next question I have here is, how do you see Zebra and Ivanti's partnership being pivotal to each company's success over the next couple of years?
Again, Scott, great question. So if you think of where technology is going, remember I said that we've built velocity and we're still investing in velocity, and we have been for the last 30 years. Think about what's next. Think about what's around the corner. Think about IIoT. Think about elements around being able to dimension packages on the fly and feeding that into a customer's workflow. So when it comes to working closely and side by side with Zebra, that is not going to change. We've been a strategic partner with Zebra for over 30 years, and that is still going to continue. We're working side by side with engineering. We're working side by side with marketing. We're working side by side with the leadership team, because the investments that Zebra is making, we are making similar investments. And again, you've heard of this, the 1 + 1 = 3. The power of two large customers coming together to create more than the sum of its parts. It's nothing that's new, right? But to keep that fresh, to keep the investments, to keep the ideas going, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. We're continuing to invest in our relationship with Zebra. We're continuing to invest in newer technology with our IoT platform, Neurons. Plus, we're continuing the investments and growing the space that we have, the sphere that we're in inside supply chain across all verticals. And we only partner with best of breed. And that's part of the reason why we are continuing to invest and work with Zebra Technologies.
Excellent. And we thank you for your investment and time, Paul. We really appreciate the partnership.
Absolutely, and this is it's a relationship, right? It's two-way. So there are things that we want as part of that relationship. There are things that you want as part of that relationship, and the way to keep it going is by simply communicating. And we know that people buy from people, right? But people buy more from those that add value to what they do. So that's exactly what we want to do, and continue to bring value to what Zebra are looking to do.
Yeah, agreed. People definitely buy from people. It's something that I express to my alliance and ISVs as we bring them onto the partnership and into the organization, into the ecosystem, is to build relationships with our value channel partners, to ensure they're building a relationship there, and everyone can see what some of these outcomes that the customers are looking for, and we're looking at it from an outcome-driven perspective with our customers.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say outcomes, because one of our Ivanti values is outcomes matter most. And if you think about that as a value, that value drives some of the technology that we're putting together. So not just the investments that we're making into velocity, but also, think about picking hands-free, right? And if I've got a device in my hand, or I'm hanging onto it and I'm scanning a package, or whatever, if I put that device down and I go and move this package, I move it from there to there, it may be that I've forgotten where that device is. Hopefully I've not kind of put it into a box and taped it up and it's on its way to wherever. But to be able to look at how customers are operating right now, and to offer things like hands-free picking, so our technology Speakeasy, that allows customers to pick and pack hands-free just by listening to their next command. Go here, pick these, pack that. Go to your next location, pick this, pack that.
Right.
And you could have your device strapped to your chest. It could be on an arm. It could be one of the new Zebra wearable devices, the WS50, for example, where you've got Velocity running and potentially Speakeasy running to, again, do things hands-free. You won't have to put your device down and potentially lose it, or looking at the elements of getting the most out of your technology, as well as keeping your people safe as well. So really, for customers who are considering, what's next, look at what you have in your estate. Look at how you can make gradual and small changes to really make a massive impact, because it's all about outcomes that matter most, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the WS50, and I know it's not a product positioning type of conversation, but the reason I'm bringing it up, as I'm piggybacking off of what you just said, is the customers that I speak with and the other alliance partners I speak with, what they're hearing in the market is customers are interested in voice solutions to drive efficiencies in their warehouses. So something to your point, something like a WS50, it's a wearable device, makes it very easy for someone to pick and pack and move within that environment, and obviously maintain their two hands open in case there is any safety issues whatsoever. Right? God forbid somebody were to fall, they can catch themselves that easily. So that's where something like a WS50 with Ivanti runs, and Ivanti Speakeasy would be something that our customers should consider, because really what they're looking at is the outcome of how to make that existing resource more efficient, or if they're bringing on a new resource, how to train them up as quickly as possible and get them to the right levels of efficiencies within a week or 2 weeks of bringing them on board.
Right, and that absolutely resonates. And if I take off my Ivanti hat and I put on my kind of Paul Norford consumer hat, absolutely, I'm one of the reasons why the on-demand economy is as it is, because I want what I want when I want it. I obviously want it for the cheapest price, but I want it when I want it, wherever I am in the world, right? And
That's right.
if you have a customer, if you have a supplier who really is not particularly efficient, gone are the days where I would wait for 3 or 4 days to get my package. No, absolutely not. I want my package now. And if you look at, and we touched on this earlier, if you look at micro fulfillment centers, as long as you have visibility throughout what you're trying to achieve in your supply chain workflow, then you know exactly what's going on in your business. If you don't have that visibility, gracious me, it's not going to be long before you're going to have to make massive investments to stay ahead of the competition who do have visibility of what's going on in their workflow. So by making those incremental improvements, by bringing in smaller devices, again, the WS50 is a great device, because it means that you can strap something to the wrist of a task worker to be able to move around and have hands free. There's the safety element that goes with it as well. Or if you want to change that experience from a 2-inch screen up to a TC5X device, you've got that as well. But it's not about technology for technology's sake. This is technology to allow task workers to push the boundaries and perhaps gamify productivity to ensure that they've got accuracy every single time they pick, because this is all about the outcome for the consumer. And I don't want to receive the wrong package. I don't want to receive Scott's package, and I'm sure Scott doesn't want to receive what I've just ordered. Although you may want it because I've just ordered a new pair of headphones. But the point is, accuracy has to happen. Right, exactly. Accuracy has to happen throughout the supply chain. Productivity has to happen throughout the supply chain. And that will include human workers as well as technological workers with robots. But it all comes down to outcomes matter most, and staying relevant in the supply chain field where there are pinches all over the place really does need to happen.
Yeah, so Paul, I'll tell you a little bit more about our ISV program and our Alliance program. To your point, I think where we're driving the outcome discussion with customers is in that area. So our investments continue in the Alliance and in the ISV program. We're expanding that specifically in North America, obviously across the globe as we are a global organization. But I can speak for North America as what we're looking to do is expand with organizations like yours, speak with the customer, understand what those outcomes are, and ensure that we're innovating together to bring those outcomes to our channel partners, to our customers, and they can easily use that, configure it, and get what they're looking for. We're not looking to build a solution just to build it. It's a solution that they need. It's a solution that they're asking for, that's necessary for their operations to continue to grow. And in that, we're looking to expand our markets, which is amazing. To your point, we're in these different verticals, whether it's retail or BOPIS or quick service restaurants. Now we're expanding. We've seen tremendous growth in RFID. We're seeing more growth in healthcare. We mentioned earlier today in the supply chain function in healthcare. That's a huge section and sector that I think is going to have tremendous growth, as well as the supply chain in the government sector. So there's tons of supply chain driven conversations that go across multiple verticals that would allow us to expand both our organizations and business. This is where the customers are asking for outcome driven type solutions like ours.
Scott, and forgive me for this, I'm going to turn the table slightly, and I don't know if you knew that this was coming, but I've got a question for you. So you mentioned about investments in the ISV program. Firstly, how important is the ISV program to Zebra, and what are Zebra doing to innovate within the program for non-transactional partners just like us?
So I'm glad you mentioned non-transactional. So let's explain that and unpack that a little bit. Non-transactional partners are partners like yourselves who are not necessarily reselling our hardware or any one of our particular platforms. And I'll call it a platform,
Right.
Because Zebra devices are that. There are multiple solutions that can sit on top of our platform, whether it's an RFID platform or a mobile computer or printing platform. And what we're doing is we're innovating by looking at other solutions like yours and speaking with our business unit teams and creating integration at that level so that we can expand the types of solutions so that we can innovate together and not just on our own. And the expansion of our non-transactional partners or ecosystem, right, includes alliances, includes software vendors. So it's more than just what you would traditionally call an ISV, which is an independent software vendor. It's now an alliance organization, which is looking at consultants, maybe even SAP consultants or IBM Maximo consultants, other organizations out there from an ERP perspective. You have warehouse management solutions, transportation management solutions. There's so much more that we're doing that we're looking at. I mean, even from an expansion market perspective, look at our fixed industrial scanning, our robotics, workforce connect. So we're talking about voice. In the warehouse, we're looking at fixed industrial scanning so you can do quality checks on our products as they're going out. Even in robotics, to your point earlier, right? The innovation there is how do I take some of these mundane tasks or low value tasks and take them away from our resources and put them on higher value tasks that are more impactful to the organization. So this is where we're trying to innovate, and we're working with new solutions. So it's new markets for us. So that's where we look to expand in our alliance organization.
Great. Thank you for that.
Well, Paul, thank
Turn
you.
the table slightly.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Allow me to thank you on Zebra's behalf for sharing your knowledge with us and our audience. And to our audience, thank you very much for your time and attention. We really appreciate it. Know that we're looking at our ecosystem and we value our alliance partners, our ISVs, and our channel partners. And we look to continue to find growth within our entire ecosystem. And we look to drive innovation and outcomes with you, our customers. Thank you.